Good morning, everyone. I am John O'Loughlin. Welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives. And there we go, a duplicate audio that I often have to kill. Sorry about that. Anyway, good morning and happy 21st day of January. My grandfather's birthday, McDuff's father, Tom Sr., Thomas F. O'Loughlin Sr., born January 21st in 1898. He graduated from Catholic University in Washington, D.C. in 1919 with a degree in law, but never practiced law. I think some conflict happened with his family, and he ended up as a school teacher and principal. Well, that was Grandpa, who died, I guess, about 30 years ago. A very, very important man in my life, and somebody who kind of took over as after Dad died in 71. Well, good morning, everybody, once again, and especially good morning to our great investigative reporter who really has been ahead of the news, far ahead of anyone else, George Webb.
Hey, John, I appreciate that. Well, I saw your show last night, Dr. Mary's Monkey, and John's doing these 1-hour summaries, and if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's great. He does a shout out for me, the Quigley interview, the very famous Quigley download. Everybody talks about the real Q. The real Q was Quigley. And he downloads and has this meeting with Oswald, and he destroys his notes. So Jim Marrs actually did a shout out to that in the introduction of Ed Haslam's book, which is really helpful when you get a shout out from Jim Marrs, you know. So these are the leads that we follow up on to solve the problem. Now, I'm going to present a little bit of information. I'm ready to, if you want me to, John, about what I think Jim was talking about. But it's a theory. It's not, you know, it's a theory.
Well, this is what I really do enjoy, George, is your ability to go out way out in front of anything I've read and to put things together in a way that makes sense. And I not only do I give you permission, I encourage you, okay, because this is how we learn. And you know, I can't think of a time that you've done this and gotten too far over your skis and crashed. Maybe it happens, but it's still worth it no matter what.
Okay, well, I've taken the liberty then of preparing a series of slides.
I look forward to it.
The first one is Oswald walking, not with his CIA buds, but walking with the guy in the Stetson with the police officer there, in the Stetson.
Oh, we were out of order, I guess.
Yeah, well, we'll get back to that one. The key there is no Stetson. Okay, well,
I thought I had this.
Okay. Well, if we don't have the Stetson, here it is. And this is easy. Right here. There it is. And this is from a book called Blood Treason.
Oh, and that's the when they're walking kind of the perp walk, right?
Yeah. I think this is the day of the assassination. Remember, Oswald's picked up an hour after the assassination. So Oswald's looking, his eyes are darting around. Where's my FBI handler? Where's my CIA handler? He seems like he's looking for his handler, right? So he's kind of killing time. He doesn't want to give up the conspiracy because he thinks he's a part of it. Is this displaying now, Andy? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So the first thing he says, well, when Oswald goes to New Orleans in the summer of 62, why does he report directly to, and it may be the summer of 63, but anyway, why does he report directly to 544 Camp Street? Why does he go straight to an FBI officer who also was in the CIA?
And that's Banister, right?
That's Banister. Why does he go directly and report and that's where Quigley does his interview, by the way. And the reason is, now I'll go to a couple of other different books here, but the reason is this researcher named Kaiser, if you want to go to the limousine shot, this researcher named Kaiser, Kaiser says that there was a joint program between the FBI and the CIA in the COINTELPRO program. Now, we know your dad was familiar with COINTELPRO, but I'll let you cover that evidence. But not a participant of it, I don't believe. But anyway, the idea was that they were spraying using an operation called Operation Rainbow, spraying different things, defoliants, spraying things. In a wartime situation, you want to keep the disease down for your guys. But there was also spraying with this Oshner. Oshner had entered into a program, and I believe it's going to be called Operation Rainbow in 57 or 58. I think in your reading last night, you covered that, John, where progressively Dr. Oshner had bought this farmland out near Lake Pontchartrain and was being increasingly more and more involved with military and CIA.
Hey, this is where I have to ask, because the idea was that he bought that to create a big monkey farm.
Yeah.
But you've also reported on a secret camp.
Yep.
On that north side of Lake Pontchartrain.
Yep.
So are those two the same? Are they connected?
Yeah.
How do you put that together?
Well, later they're connected with Mongoose, but before that, you're going to and people are going to argue about the name and what the name of the operation was. And I don't want to get bogged down. I could be wrong about the name. I believe it's Operation Rainbow, but it could be some other name. But you get the idea that the CIA takes a very lethal weapon used in wartime and then puts it into a lab and attenuates it so that it just maybe marks people or just makes them sick or makes them sick just for long enough to alter their DNA so it sort of genetically marks them. And if in COINTELPRO you had all these protesters, so could they have weakened the virus down to spraying crowds and so forth, that these people are potentially trying to, communists trying to take over the country, that would weaken them, not kill them. We don't know if that's what Oshner was working on, but a lot of the scientists who had paperclip scientists had gone to South and Central America, the most famous one being Mengele. Okay. And that's where those programs were continuing. And if you're a paperclip scientist, you can't just walk into Fort Detrick and go, hey, I'm a paperclip scientist, and we have some stuff that, although they did, the secrets did go that way, but they needed to go between, to go between New Orleans, the southernmost capital that they controlled with their mobster, Marcelo, and these different places where they were trying to take over the country. And like you mentioned, Peron in Argentina. And the go-between pilot was David Ferry. Okay. And David Ferry is also at this 544 Camp Street. So we know your dad later in Operation Shocker gets involved in the Russians in this kind of espionage. And he's also involved with Oswald and Ruby. So we don't know the details here, but go ahead, John.
No, I just wanted to clarify. At that time, is Banister still FBI, or has he officially already become CIA? And I rank him among the people who the CIA recruited from the FBI during the 50s, but I don't know when that happened. And I kind of, as much as I know about Hoover and the FBI and the way that they often were not operating within the law, I still prefer to think of the FBI as consisting mainly of good McDuff type people, whereas the CIA I associate with Ed Lansdale and people that will just do anything. So Guy Banister, I think, got seduced to the dark side, unless he was there all along. I don't know, but I wonder what you can tell us about that.
Yeah, Guy Banister was a FBI agent in Chicago.
Right. And in Chicago, of course, is where William Sullivan, he was Banister was the head of the special agents in charge of Chicago at one point. And then I don't know if he was directly followed by William Sullivan, but William Sullivan features large in my father's career. Yeah.
Well, and your dad's report about Oswald and Ruby is to Sullivan later on for the Warren Commission. Yeah. But so Banister, we believe, no question he got involved and seduced by Sam Giancana. And they said, hey, you're going to make all this money, but you got to run this office down here. We're going to run this thing called Bay of Pigs. And we need you to get a filing cabinet full of people who are willing to do that. And we're also going to run a counterintelligence operation for pro-Castro so that we can dossier all these people. Okay, so that was the operation. Now, people are going to call this different things. Some people are going to call it COINTELPRO. I'm just focusing on the Operation Rainbow, which later goes to Vietnam, which uses all these same components in the lethal form. Okay, the non-lethal form, the one that just makes you sick and genetically marks you or slows you down, is the FBI potentially looking at this. So the book Blood Treason goes into this a little bit. And what's interesting about Oswald is, you mentioned with Dr. Mary's monkey, Oswald's making this trip out to Clinton, where it looks like they're doping these mental patients. He goes out to register to vote there. So they make a big show with Clay Shaw, goes out there with David Ferry with him. David Ferry also has the training camp John mentioned. So the idea here is Oswald was a CIA agent in Russia. Now he's coming back, maybe with secrets, to develop a program for the CIA and for the FBI at Ochsner's Institute, and that's the general thesis of this Kaiser guy. Okay, so I think it's interesting because it would explain why an FBI counterintelligence guy like your dad would be involved with Oswald. Basically, you're usually trying to, flip an agent, flip an operative, and then introduce him into an operation to get all the information about the operation, so that you can make a big drug bust, or you can make a big bust like busting up the training camp, David Ferry and Oswald's training camp in July of 1963. So that's the background here. And Andy, there's another one, JFK confession, shock claim, Lee Harvey Oswald work covert operation with FBI exposed. So again, this isn't my theory. I'm just presenting and collating off John's lead from the book last night. And this has got a picture of Oswald, a dramatic reading of Oswald in color. JFK confession, shock claim. So if not, it's not terribly important, but it was published by Joel Day on June 17th, 2020. But this is what I also like about kind of
is one of the files.
This one, Andy. Look over at me. Okay, see the guy. Maybe you didn't get that, but that's okay. The bottom line is that there's a lot of people who believe that Oswald was an FBI informant when he got back to the United States. He got intercepted in the summer of '62. He got his mind turned around and head on straight, and then was inserted into this program. Remember, Oswald's a pilot as well. So David Ferry's doing these long flights to go get Juan Perón. You mentioned Ochsner had actually built a hotel for all the people in South America that were coming up and getting health care. So there's a lot of flights here. And so this is why I believe Barry Seal and Oswald are recruited. But later on, you're going to see where Mary Sherman, this gets into the Mary Sherman piece, and David Ferry's apartment has all this scientific apparatus. There's also not just, in these programs, you don't just need to send the person, but they also need things like centrifuges, microscopes, scientific equipment. So sometimes you're shuttling people, but then other times you're shuttling scientific equipment. So I don't subscribe to the theory that David Ferry was this polyglot. He had a PhD in psychology, I think, but I don't say that he was a microbiologist and all these things. The rats and so forth are vectors. Everybody talks about the mice cages and all that in his apartment. Again, the way you get a pathogen from Mengelas, let's say in Brazil or Argentina, wherever the lab was, to the United States is you have to fly it there, and the mouse is your friend, and you can't fly commercial with a whole bunch of things that could be filled with all kinds of disease. You have to do these hops, and this makes so much sense of why Guatemala is in the picture in this program, because Guatemala is where Marcello's home country is, and it's where the stopping point, if you will, the last stop before home, before you make the home run to Homa and Homa Airfield.
What is the stuff that you suspect that they are creating in South America and importing through David Ferry's ferry service to New Orleans?
Well, I think Ed's on the money here by following up on, the statistics in the soft cancer, vertical line. That got somehow introduced into, there were 6 different companies that were contracted to do I think you mentioned the Salk vaccine last night, but the Sabin vaccine, oral vaccine as well. But it was very untested, much like right now, so applicable to right now, John, as you mentioned last night, and these monkey viruses. So I think it was a potpourri of the monkey viruses. It just so happens Mengele, and if you go back to the research, remember, they have all the papers that went to Fort Meade right after the war, 46-ish timeframe, but you don't have the intellectual capital, right? So you have to develop this out of the United States and then bring it in when it's kind of ready to commercialize. So I think it's everything that they were working on. There was tularemia, there was anthrax, there was, but mostly the soft tissue cancers with the viruses. If you look at what John was saying last night in the book, where you take a cancer that's been accelerated with radiation, let's say, and then you end up with a whole potpourri of stuff you don't know, and you throw the monkey guts into the blender and you just start blending, you don't know what you're going to get. It's called shotgun sequencing when we were, and you put it in the polio virus and you test it on millions of people and see what happens. I think the number one thing that resulted was the cancers, because it just messes up cancer. It depends on the cell machinery working correctly. And I think the viruses just messed up the genomes in some people. And I would say mainly cancers, but HIV certainly I know is one of the things Ed talks about is a possibility there as well.
I would emphasize the researcher Bernice Eddy, who has, once again, one of those people that has not been favored by history with recognition, but she was the first person to say that cancer can be transmitted by a virus. And we have experts today that are saying that's not true.
Well, Bernice Eddy took the Salk vaccine this is the attenuated form that was supposed to be dead, that actually had a lot alive in it, and put it into monkeys, like you mentioned last night, John, and paralyzed the monkeys.
They all fell over. They all fell over paralyzed, and yet Dr. Ochsner, and this is where my mind just doesn't. I can't wrap my mind around this. That he knew that this was untested and risky, but he had some kind of incredible faith that it was going to be okay. As a matter of fact, it was going to be safe. And so he injected his 2 grandchildren, and the boy died and the girl got polio, and it had not been tested and it was not safe. And it reminds me of these zealots that will, just pump themselves up, like a Hitler or somebody that would say, hey, you know what, we're going to invade Russia, we're going to win, God darn it, we're going to win. And that type of very positivism, it's also reflected in John Foster Dulles as the Secretary of State, who very much emphasized positive action. Do something, do it, figure out what to do and do it. And that idea of people that don't just go out and take action as being lesser important, people who aren't really advancing the cause of humanity the way active people do. And these active people tend to make a lot of goddamn stupid mistakes.
Yes, they do. Well, and also this is the group that's coming from the IG Farben experiment. So you're in for a penny and you're in for a pound. I mean, after you've incinerated 6 million people with all kinds of testing before they were incinerated, what's a few monkeys at that point, or what's testing on a whole bunch of innocent American kids at that point? You're, like you say, the Rockefeller group put all kinds of pressure on these doctors to
Oh,
sign.
Andy, don't show that. That just makes me so sad.
They
Please,
they
please
don't go
don't.
worse than this.
Yeah. We'll move on to something else.
Please don't. Because that's happening, and worse things than that are happening right now all over the world. Thousands of monkeys in that same place in Louisiana still there. And my God, George, I don't understand how people can do that, but they do it because they've got swept up into
Well, I mean,
this
if
gain
you do,
of function.
yeah.
Is so unethical. There's this gut level of how could anybody think that's a good idea? It's not, but yet they get it done.
Well, this was the Nazis' ultimate dream war weapon.
Yeah.
I mean, go back to the first use of chemical weapons by Bayer Corporation, and we've talked about the foundations that they use. This was their dream, that they would just open the canisters and it would all blow over and all the enemy would be dead and we would have Europe.
Yeah.
And that's when they first used it. And this has been the 100th year of a stepwise refinement program. Just the only thing that's happened is the people involved have moved around a little bit, but the foundations are still the same. I can't remember the name of the foundation right now. That was over at the University of Delaware when Joe Biden's son was running the University of Delaware. But it's within that. Muhammad Atta was also in that foundation. I'll remember here in a second. It was one of the key early guys that started Bayer Corporation and came up with the first gas. But if you look at all the development in the death houses, what gets pushed down is the doctors. The doctors' trial was broken out from the other research in the Nuremberg trials. The doctors were always kind of pushed away. They didn't want to cover that, but that was the most insidious part of the research, and that was their ticket to getting in the United States. I believe the operation was called Rainbow because the person who was supposed to take the pathogen to Castro in this program, which later became Operation Mongoose, was this Marita Lorenz. And instead of killing Castro or poisoning him, she told Castro what the plot was. But her father was a U-boat captain who was a part of Operation Rainbow. And that was to get all the subs out and get all the Nazis out, the scientists and intelligence folks out of Germany at the end of the war, Operation Rainbow. I don't know how you say it in German, John. I know you probably do. But that's why it was named Marita Lorenz supposedly gave the name. Now, fast forward, Fort Belvoir. There's in 1970, there's a directive by Richard Nixon to tell we're going to sign the BWC contract, the Bioweapons Convention. So we have to move this to a Nato partner, and we move it to Sidney Gottlieb in Canada. And Richard Helms moves it up there, and it's moved successively since then. Iran was a big partner in this. Israel also a partner in this. So, but the original papers, the original testing still being done at Fort Belvoir. So it has, this is why I wrote the book called Operation Rainbow. Somewhere under the rainbow, I have to change the name because rainbow is so, derisive, I guess. So it's going to be somewhere under the lockdown because this book's now triple the size. By the way, I've just rewritten it on Patreon, but the reason being is that this research continues today. Operation Rainbow continues today. I don't know if that's the same name still. It used to be Program 112. When Nixon knocked it down, Tiljana said it had morphed into Operation 2101. They like ones and twos. And then, of course, there was somebody with an I and an A in Congress. I can't remember what his name is, but anyway, he had a Dropbox called 123. So you never know what those was going to other countries in the terabyte form, but there you have it. The research continues is the point I'm making.
It's something the American people need to know about, and I want everyone to understand, the Fort Detrick story as it really is. And those of us that have grown up in the Washington area, I mean, you hear about Fort Detrick, you know that they are making biological weapons, but then it just goes in one ear and out the other ear, and you forget about it because, it's not a imminent threat to anybody. It just seems like, unfortunately, that's where it is. But also unfortunately, there it is right upstream of Washington, D.C. and very close to the Potomac River. And the scenario is a nightmare scenario. And that's where I think, where we're stuck right now is there's people that are willing to go right up, eyeball to eyeball with destruction of everything. And weapons of mass destruction don't just necessarily mean nuclear bombs anymore. It means chemical, it means biological, and these things are hidden. But it goes back to the CIA on the one hand and the organized crime descendants on the other hand, and the fact that they're still not resolved. I mean, you know what? We did see Gaga go out there with a great big peace eagle with an olive branch in its mouth, just announcing that there's been a peace. Well, a peace between who and who? And it's a peace between the Trump folks and the deep state. And Hillary out there with purple on and all of this royal purple that, a lot of people don't recognize that this is symbolic. This is the empire. This is the Roman imperial purple. And they're saying, we are the greatest tributes. We pay the greatest tribute to the empire, and the other side says, no, it's us. It's us. We're your best friend there, Emperor. That stress between these two has apparently come to a head. And now, as President Trump said, he says, we leave it on the field. We walk away. I'd like to leave it on the field and, don't start something that ain't going to be nothing.
Yeah.
But I think that we're in for a really rocky road, George. And well, anyway, let's get back to what you were talking about with Lee Harvey Oswald being exposed as an agent of the FBI. Not an agent, but a contractor.
Yeah. And it turned out that in the COINTELPRO program, and I want to come back to what you just said, John, in a second, but in the COINTEL program, they hired a lot of American Legions and VFWs. So you go in as an agent, you say, hey, we're making a couple of 10,000 gallon tanks of such and such in Brazil, and we need to get it over to Guatemala. We're about ready to do, Arbenz is, this is the Fletcher Prouty type, dark ops type of thing. And so that's where you might have a SACSA type person looking at this going, hey, wait a minute, that you should be, looping the Joint Chiefs in on this. And that's maybe where you put your best man. So, but I do agree with you, John, that this COINTELPRO concept, again, it's changed its name and morphed, but it's still very much alive. Coronavirus goes back actually to this lab in 1962 when the breakout of the common cold. They had morphed it from, I believe, I want to say poultry in China, or what the bird flu came later, but the common cold, I believe, came the coronavirus zoonotic, transfer. The zoonosis you were talking about last night was poultry. Or maybe it was pigs. But anyway, I can't remember but the original coronavirus shows up in, guess where? New Orleans. So this becomes the common cold, and the number one beneficiary then was Bayer. Take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. It became a watchword of mothers in America. And
George, are you saying that there was not a common cold throughout history?
No, common cold.
What?
was 1962 or
What?
61. Yeah, yeah. Coronavirus is common cold. Andy, do common cold because I believe it started in the initial breakout was in the American South, and again, Chinese poultry was blamed, or Chinese farm animals were blamed. So this is kind of a replay. Same guys did the Corona satellite by odd chance. The same guys did Corona Park for the World's Fair that your dad went to. So you're going to bring it up, man?
Yeah.
He's going to share the screen here. So I can't read that from here. So just search on Corona. If you just do Control F and then type the word Corona, Andy, it'll get you all the occurrences of Corona. But you can see the spike protein on the outside of it. It's a star-shaped thing. No. You do Control F. Command F.
Command F.
Yeah. And see that little window that comes up, the search window?
Yeah.
And now type Corona there.
I'm learning.
Yeah. And see your hits on Corona? Yeah. So it's a species of the coronavirus, the common cold. And guess what, folks? No cure for the common cold. If you look at the variants that come out of this same tree, SARS, the respiratory virus that was developed for the Arab Spring, and also MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, same thing. And this current thing we have now is really SARS-2. SARS-1 was introduced for Arab Spring, I want to say 2010, MERS 2013-ish, and then of course they live on once they're introduced. But now we have SARS-2, and we have 5 variants of SARS-2. And I can't remember, it was about a year and a half ago, they found all the Nazi artwork. They found all the Nazi papers at Fort Belvoir. And I said, wow, this is the typical hangout where they do a limited hangout. They say, oh, here's all the Hitler art. And I'm telling you, it's the size of a wall. But they don't tell you that the other papers that came from, remember camp, what was the camp that then they tore down when they
Fort Hunt?
Fort Hunt, yeah. Fort Belvoir, a couple of miles away from those where the original Nazi papers were for I.G. Farben from the death camp research. Well, it's always been my theory that things move as little as possible because of intercept. You might want to we went there, John. You showed me all this stuff. It was great.
It's not Camp Hunt, Andy. It's Fort Hunt.
Fort Hunt, yeah.
Yeah.
But John took me all these places when I got here, and it's almost like a hand, guiding us. Because when you were talking last night, I said, I cannot believe John is going to talk about this. I just have finished the book, and I was looking for the missing piece in Louisiana. We're talking about going down to Louisiana and doing a charrette down there in February after Mardi Gras, because we don't want to get involved in that. And then you mentioned Pontchartrain, and you mentioned Ochsner had this 500 acres. And I said,
Yeah,
oh
it's
my
like
God.
1,300 acres, if I
1,300.
recall. It was huge.
And then the training camp was another 500 acres beyond that. And I said, oh my goodness gracious. Here it is. These things come together. And Dr. Mary Sherman, I believe, worked for Ochsner.
Yeah, she was hired by Ochsner. She was the great University of Chicago student who like the brightest of the bright.
And then I think Judith Very Baker worked with her. Their careers paralleled for a while, and I haven't read all of Dr. or Lee and Me, but if you listen to Dr. Baker, and I've traded a lot of email with her. We spoke once on the phone, I think. But she very much says Lee Harvey Oswald was involved in this program.
Mm-hmm.
So, and, it was interesting. Fletcher Prouty, I think, said this. I can't remember where I heard this, but there was a vial, Ed talks about the vial, and he was saying the staging area for all the chemical weapons for all the revolutions was in Mexico City. Frank Sturgis ran that. And, Cofer Black and Ted Shackley, these are all guys that are still in the whole Biden thing right now. But anyway, that what Ed says was the shuttling between Louisiana and Mexico City was the short hop. They would bring the South American guys to Mexico City, and they would bring the American scientists to New Orleans, and that was a short hop rather than flying the planes all the time. So that's in also her book, Dr. Mary. She talks about going around to the different places that might be developing weapons, like Eli Lilly in Indiana. She goes, and they're all Jesuit universities. So I don't even know what to make of that.
Well, and by the way, I did notice we were talking about Tommy D'Alessandro, the mayor of Baltimore at the time of operation of the Bay of Pigs operation, and you've reported a lot on him. I just noticed he was a graduate of Loyola University in Baltimore.
Okay.
So there's another Jesuit graduate for you.
We'll just keep adding up the Jesuits here.
Well, yeah, I mean, they do tend to come out of the woodwork. And then you also have the ones that are masquerading as something else too, because that's part of the Jesuit order, is they send people out, undercover to try to make it easier for the official ones to do their work.
Yeah. So there's a lot of intrigue in this story, and the only thing I'm trying to do today is just point you at other people who have delved into this Oswald as an FBI informant, so that makes the record searches easier, so we know what to FOIA. And so many books have been written about the Kennedy assassination. There's a chance it's already been published. We just don't know about it yet. And just bring it forward to my attention or John's attention or both of our attention. But we really are on the cusp of discovering the darkest secret. And I think Ed and Jim Mars both had that sense that this was really the key that unlocked the deepest secrets. And of course, I hate to say this, but I go back to Colby again, having the late life absolution, moments of contrition, wanting to out the family jewels of the CIA. And this certainly, along with MK Ultra with Richard Helms, this was Richard Helms's other baby, was the dark weapons. So, and who worked with Richard Helms? Gopher Black of Burisma. So, through Ted Shackley, nothing changes. Brennan said, we got to get Trump out of there and shut him down before the transition, because he could declassify a whole bunch of stuff. And what happens 2 weeks before the thing? They take away his social media. They blame him. They run 100 people into Washington, D.C. for psyops. They're openly saying they ran 100 people into Washington, D.C. Where did I get the 100 number? The FBI. Where did I get the name Emily Rainey? The FBI. Where did I get Fort Bragg? The FBI. Where did I get Antifa? The FBI. So it's funny how you can take this fact set, this fact pattern, and then come up with Trump did it. It seems like Trump's the victim again, and he's getting blamed for something he's the victim of.
Yeah, I'm still kind of just in shock, and I'm not going to try to take any political shots at Biden right now. I'm still kind of working on acceptance, accepting that this is the reality, and the next 4 years are going to be written by the people that we have studied for the past 4 years, and the writing on the wall is pretty damn ugly. I'm really concerned. So my liberal friends they saying, "Oh, I feel so relieved today. I feel so much less depression now that the election's over." And I'm glad they feel better, but I have to say I feel the opposite. I feel every day I'm afraid that they're going to pull something, like judging people by the color of their skin. How can you judge people by the color of their skin at the same time that you're complaining about having been a victim of racism? But this is coming. They're going to judge people not based upon individual characteristics like American justice. It's going to be massive, the people with pink faces, or the people, what I'm trying to say is this kind of socialism that is based on race is the essence of Nazism. That national form of socialism is actually what they call Nazism, is actually a racial based totalitarian system where there's one race at the top and all the rest fall into place. That kind of system can't be consistent with the American Constitution and our laws. This is what John F. Kennedy died for, was to preserve the individual rights and the American system of justice, and not to concede to the enemy, really, in order to snatch what appears to be a victory for oppressed minorities. The term, white privilege is not accurate. What you really have is discrimination against people who are not white. So the answer is not to bring white people's standard of living down. The answer is to bring minority people's standard of living up. And that is the answer that the elites are not going to go for. They're going to blame race against race. And as far as I can see, there's a lot of people that are following this disastrous course. I am very concerned about the future, but that's just between you and me right now. I'm not going to try to make a big stand, or take on Steny Hoyer, the congressman from my district right now. I'm just going to kind of work on acceptance, and as usually happens, there will be a way to keep on the path of honesty. Fiat justitia, ruat caelum. Let justice be done, though the heavens fall.
Yeah, I finally can recognize that in Latin without having the translation. Yeah, John, I think you nailed it. I have nothing against Joe Biden. I look at the facts and follow the Blackberries and follow the encrypted communications. And I do not blame him, just like I didn't blame Obama. And I don't blame Trump. This isn't coming from there. It's coming from Cofer Black and CIA. And I've been straight up about that. I feel like Biden's very compromised, just like Trump had a few compromises, and Obama had a closet full of compromises. So this is not about a political attack. This is about a deep state that controls Washington, that can shut down a president, which we saw. Okay. Everyone said that was conspiracy theory, that the deep state could shut down the president's communications. We saw it. Everybody said it was deep conspiracy theory that you'd eliminate the president's brother in the election cycle. We saw it. So everyone said there's no way Fort Belvoir soldiers would come and occupy the Capitol and put up a green zone. Well, guess what the Secret Service called the operation? Green zone. Okay. There's no way they would ever fly drones over all the crowds and spray. Guess what? Drones flew. The operation groups from Fort Belvoir that run the DC Capital District were in the air. Now, I was smart enough and I told people not to go there, because I said, if there was ever a time of you being genetically marked with something that you got sprayed with, it was going to be on the 20th. And that's Operation Rainbow. So, or I'll say somewhere under the lockdown. The Rockefeller plan, its 2010 plan, called for this. This was developed at the National Defense University in partnership with Johns Hopkins. I write about it in my book. We farmed it out to NATO. It's called the Washington NATO Project, started in 2009. This idea of joint development for the future of warfare is biowarfare. Why biowarfare? They tried to do it with nukes. Nukes were going to kill all the people and leave all the infrastructure. right? This is why the FBI might have been interested in bioweapons as well, because what if they attack Seattle or like the Aleutians in Alaska, like the Japanese did? You can't hit your own people with a nuke, asymmetrical warfare, but you can genetically mark the intruder and fight them with a bioweapon. So there may be a legitimate use for these bioweapons. But I'm just saying that if you look at the Washington NATO project done by the National Defense University, Johns Hopkins University, I trace it in the book, right? It's on Patreon. I don't know if I'm going to publish it because it is a little explosive and it does out potentially a couple of people there, but it's going to be the NATO, Washington NATO project. And it's biodefense, even using Russians and Ukrainians to develop and distribute these bioweapons. A new partnership with Russia and Ukraine, a guy named Kolomoisky, the Washington NATO project. Andy, can you Google the Washington NATO project just so people can get a lead? 2009, National Defense University. But this is this is why Obama said he wasn't going to sign the offensive bioweapons BWC control agreement. There it is. Center for Strategic Studies. That's deep state U right there. You search on bio, just do your Control F. Search on bio. They call it biodefense or biosurveillance. Say biodefense and just do a repeat find. Go through the document. This came right out of Jim Woolsey. Control F. Oh, you got it? Okay.
Yeah. Nothing's coming up
Uh,
in this article, at least.
Okay. There's other. This will get you started,
I'll
but
find one.
it's with Johns Hopkins. So when it's with Johns Hopkins, and when it's with the University of Maryland, which is IARP, not DARPA, but IARPA. IARPA is the CIA's DARPA. It's a joint project between IARPA and Johns Hopkins. Johns Hopkins does the surveillance piece of who got infected. It's called biosurveillance, and the weapon is IARPA, University of Maryland, Fort Belvoir. So a lot of roads lead here, and again, you don't want people to have reprisals, so we're going to just leave it right there for right now. But you can read the background on this and why this thing was initiated when Obama came in.
Who's that in the purple top there?
Oh, Andy, could you go back to that? Notice how this is NATO Act in Norfolk, and the Allied Command Transformation in Norfolk, ACT. The command transformation is the Atlantic Council working with our DoD to transform forces from set piece type battles to asymmetric warfare, which is the new bio warfare. So this is the documentation and the glue. Again, I'm not being cavalier here with people doxing people. There's a lot of people in the program, so it's not doxing anybody.
Especially if you don't mention any names.
Well, sometimes you can do such a tight mosaic that there's only a few people it could be.
Go back to the picture of is that Hillary in the purple there?
Yeah.
All right.
Can you read the caption, Andy?
Yeah, I would like to read that. You just scroll it up there. The chair of the group of experts, former U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, and Vice Chair Jordan van der Veer, former President CEO of Royal Dutch Shell, will attend. Secretary Albright will speak at the seminar. NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton, and U.S. Secretary of Defense Robert Gates will address the seminar. What a rogues gallery. And the whole thing starts off with a collection of think tanks, beginning with the Atlantic Council. So we see who they are. And, once again, I emphasize, when you see folks with that bright purple, it's not insignificant.
And I'm going to tell everybody that And I know I said it in the book a year ago, but this started in Holland and was tested in farmland in Belgium. It was for the beginning of the Arab Spring campaign. These bioweapons were used in Libya, Syria, Sudan, Yemen, parts of the Iranian border, Afghanistan, and Iraq. If not in Congo and other places in Africa I don't know about. But this was for Arab Spring. This was Mike Morrell, this is Kofor Black, David Petraeus, that whole crew. It has nothing to do with politics whatsoever. And those are the people that did not want this to get out. Those are the people who took over Washington in the last 14 days. This is the golden jewels. This is why they went to such extraordinary lengths to bring all of Fort Belvoir. And why? Okay, I don't want to go into the lie detector thing. But one way of testing everyone in a program is to take the whole damn fort and bring it up to the Capitol. And you think it's an honor that you're serving in the honor guard. And then all of a sudden you find yourself wired to a lie detector. And Peter Strzok has a better lie detector now than he was using back in '93 when he was putting this team together for Kosovo or Bosnia. So this 97, this was used for the first time in Kosovo. These weapons were used for the first time in Kosovo.
Well, I see that they have a Kissinger chair there, and George, I can tell you that that doesn't mean a thing to me, because you know what I have? I have a McDuff chair, and you know, I sit in that when I read my books here on the show, and it's my dad's Harvard chair. And it's a far more enlightening experience to sit in my dad's chair, kind of like sitting in the wisdom seat down at Bob Marley's mausoleum, as I did about 6 years ago. The McDuff Lives is a real concept, George, and I feel him with me every day. I feel his hand on my shoulder, and I will do the best I can for the rest of my life to expose what they did to him, to my family, and to this country.
Yeah, and tomorrow ends our little Olympic Village that we've had here. It's been the whole month of January. And a lot of happened. This, you know, the renovation here at the house looks great. The studio looks great.
Well, we got a lot of books to put away. I tell you what, if anybody wanted to see my library, there's an easy way to do it. Come on over here and restock my bookshelves, because we've had them all on the floor.
Yeah, it's really great to see all the. It's a good chance to kind of do your index search as you put it back up. But John, it's been really great. Thank you. This whole month has been fantastic with different contributions. It's really been great by everybody, photographing, moving the boxes, Andy, Wes, painting, everything. It's just been fantastic.
Wes, thank you. Deborah, thank you so much. Ellen, Tom, who's out there fixing up our second car to be useful here on the island and perhaps beyond. Everybody's pitched in, and everything is going as it should be here at McDuff Channel. McDuff Lives, and thanks very much for being with us this morning. George Webb, the more I have you here, the more I like it. Just keep coming back.
Yeah, and don't forget Andy's plug for memberships, right? You want to do your membership plug, Andy?
John can do it, and I'll pull it up on the screen.
Well, we are offering 3 membership levels: bronze, silver, and what's the other one? Gold, right? Yeah. And we've had about a half dozen people take advantage already. Andy's preparing a number of thank you gifts and significant giveaways to thank those that choose to join. But nobody has to join. We're going to keep on providing our content for free right here at McDuff Lives. So to join, you see a join button at our homepage on YouTube. So just go to McDuff Lives, the front page, and you'll see a button that's blue and white called Join.
Thanks, John.
All right.
All right, we'll see you tonight.